Good afternoon to our friends on the East Coast and good morning to our friends on the West Coast. Thank you for joining today's webinar on enhancing firm growth using revenue analytics with our friend Lacey from Smart Kx. While everyone's making their way in, a couple quick notes. We do have Q&A available. If you have any questions during today's webinar, feel free to put those in the Q&A section. Also, I will note that today's webinar is being recorded and you will be getting a copy of that recording as well. With that, we'll give everyone another 30 seconds or so to make their way in, and then we'll get things kicked off. Right. Again, thank you all for joining today's webinar on enhancing firm growth using revenue analytics with Smart Kx and Wealthbox. My name's Andrew Ladwig, Director of Business Development here at Wealthbox. I work with our custodial partners, broker-dealer partners, as well as our integration partners. Today, I am really excited to be joined by our friend Lacey Schrum from Smart Kx. Lacey, before we dive in today, would love to hear a little bit of your background and what Smart KX does as well.
Hi. Well, hi, Andrew. It's so great to be here with you, and thanks for having me and um, being such a great partner to Smart KX with Wealthbox, and have really enjoyed working together. So I'm so happy to be here.
Fantastic. And as we get today's discussion kicked off, I know we're talking about revenue analytics, but why are revenue analytics so important to an advisor? And I know this discussion is timely as we're coming up on the end of the first quarter here, but what should advisors be considering when they're really diving into their revenue analytics?
Yeah, so it is important. We're at the end of March here as we record this, which crazy to think about after if you're billing quarterly and you bill next week for the second quarter, you have will have collected half of your revenue for the year.
Yeah.
So another strange way to think about it is half your revenue has been dependent, if you're doing the traditional method again, of quarterly in advance based on the last value. Um, Half of your revenue has been determined by 2 market days that we've already had. So the analytics I can hop into, why these are important. Um, we at Smart KX, we started off with AUM fee calculations and really just super deep dive into those as we were building out our features, as we were working with advisors. Um, we can talk any which way about AUM fee calculations. Anyone on the call on this webinar, Andrew and I love to just riff about AUM fee calcs when we get together. So like moving in and out, how things are calculated, around, beside, through, however to get AUM fee calculations. We've seen it all, and we love talking about and discussing those. And so as advisors were coming on, they started asking us questions about their business in general. And, most advisors who are investing in tech are also looking to grow their business, have a plan for their business. There's somewhere where they're going. And at the end of the day, their business was really the revenue, right? Like that is the reason we are all in business. There are other great things that we are doing, but that revenue is the backbone of providing for our business to grow, providing for us, our employees. And so the AUM fee calculations, of course, went into what their revenue is. And they would look at this revenue and say, okay, like I have an AUM of 250 million on January 1, and then I have revenue or AUM of 255 on March 1. Does this mean my business is better? Does it mean it's more profitable? Does it mean I'm making more money? Does it mean I have more time? We don't know that from an AUM calculation. Revenue. Okay, I was making X amount, $101,000. Now I'm making 103. Again, Does that mean my business is in a better place? Does it mean I'm more profitable? Does it mean I'm happier? I have more time? I'm doing better for my clients? We don't know. Like, and so these numbers were really like back of the napkin math, which the history of AUM fee billing is very similar. This back of the napkin math, and they kind of knew, some advisors knew these numbers, some advisors hadn't really thought of them at all. They'd been building their business, not necessarily, the working in and working on your business comparison. So that's why we've started developing at Smart Kx. We have all this great revenue info, and we've started really putting it in a way in key metrics for advisors to know and have access to so that they know their starting point, they know where they are, and then make a whole bunch of cool decisions based off of that, which we're going to get into today, and I'm excited about.
And on that note, there's a ton of advisors, to your point, that are reaching an inflection point, right? Whether it's looking at buying a business, selling a business down the line, or to your point, possibly an industry veteran that has done things a certain way for potentially decades at a time, that they're looking for more analytics on that side. So, when we start taking a look at those revenue analytics, where are firms falling short these days? What are those conversations sound like from both an educational standpoint, but also from that metric standpoint as well?
Yeah, I think the biggest piece that they're falling short, and really the information that they have access to, is just knowing what what they are going to be judged on. So, when you are looking at your business, like you said, are you looking to sell your business? Are you looking to possibly transition it to a younger advisor? Are you looking to raise capital, maybe take out loans? Those are big things, right? Like those are really impactful. You're hopefully going to have a big team behind you, and you are going to have to do all the things that we're talking about now. Those are big decisions and big moves, but there's daily decisions and daily moves that you're making, whether you know them or not, that are impacting your business leading up to that big move. So, taking on another client, what is their AUM? What is their revenue? What is their blended rate? How does that fit into your ideal client? Um, how do you want to make their fee so that it is an ideal client for you? Really, what is your ideal client? Who are you, if you have all these clients, who's your ideal client? What are you going to do with the ones outside of that? If you're passing them on to another advisor, what does that look like? How do you decide to get there? And so there's all these little small points that of decisions you're making every day, and having some objective numbers behind that, as in my key client is a $1.5 million client. He or she's household is, this spend. They're paying me X amount of dollars per year. That's percentage blended rate. My overall rate is, my client spend is 12,000 a year. My blended rate is 70. How do I get clients in that bucket? And that's probably the biggest thing missing, is most advisors don't have or haven't been looking at that information in the past to know numerically where their ideal client fits. And then, of course, be able to make decisions based off that.
It's really interesting. Before we dive into what you've built at Smart KX, and we'll be diving into Wealthbox as well and how we integrate, I think it may be insightful to get a little bit of background, Lacey, on your career and how Smart KX started, and how you've been through some of these problems. You've worked through these with firms before. Can you give us a little bit of that background, and then we'll dive into specifically how Smart KX fits in as a solution there?
Yeah. So I started out in the RIA space straight out of college, went to law school. I was in-house at an RIA and then a practicing lawyer. And my all of that history combined with my law practice, which I was at a venture firm here in Dallas. So super tech involved, super venture involved, which means raising capital, selling businesses, some security stuff. And that kind of all culminated into what Smart KX does, which is, the AUM fee calculations, um, keeping that congruent with the client agreements, the ADVs, and helping advisors build and grow, scale, and then ultimately do something with their business. So from a practice or a business perspective, the advisory firm is very similar to a law firm in that it's a time business. Like they are selling their time, and that is really hard to scale. Nobody knows that better than a lawyer. And so that's where these analytics coming back to them, um, that piece is important. Lawyers do that or should do that internally, how their time is being spent, how they're being compensated, and what toggles they want to adjust there. Um, and so that combined with a compliance background is how we built Smart KX. So we really look at it in three pieces, which you might have caught on to those three. One is obviously AUM fee calculations. The one before that would be the documentation, both with the client and your public documentation about how those fees are. And then the third is these analytics, how the numbers fit and where your clients land, with your firm analytics and your goals, and then the capabilities to adjust those seamlessly, um, as you see fit. So if you find that clients their fees need to be adjusted, we can easily do that through our system, update the fee, send the compliance docs and the agreement for signature, and update the fee automatically within Smart KX. So it's really a three-part system that flows in a circle. All three of those are reliant on each other.
And you brought up an interesting point. And some of that comes back to benchmarking, right, of practices. But you talked a little bit about auditing your rates and auditing some of the processes that are in place today. Are there any best practices from an audit perspective that you're seeing used out there? Any specific processes that make sense as you're auditing the way that you build today?
As far as what your numbers are or your billing in general.
Yeah, where it's at today, where you want to be, and kind of how to go through that process.
Yeah, so the first thing that um, and we've talked to business coaches, we've talked to M&A experts, we've talked to marketing coaches, um, really to determine what numbers to look at. And what we've come up with, along with our users, is one, looking at your average client spend. So if you're in a startup, as you and I are, Andrew, like we hear this a lot. Like, what's your average client spend? How much is your average user spending on your business? So that's, a relatively simple calculation of um, your revenue divided by the number of households you have. That'll tell you what the average household is. And then really look for bands outside of that. So if your average client spend is 10,000 and you have some that are at 2,000 and you have some that are at 30,000, looking at those, does that 2,000, does that make sense that that's, your user or your client, or do you need to have them up their fee, add services, or transition? So that average client spend is a really big one. And then the other one that kind of dovetails off that is, what is your overall blended rate? So when we look at tiered or even flat percentage fees, um, you always hear, and which I've used it a couple of times in the last 10 minutes, is, our default of 1%. So you got $1 million, 1% is 10,000 a year, 25 a quarter. Um, and most of the time advisors are surprised when they get in and they see, like, what is my average blended rate across my entire business? Most will say, well, it should be one, but we have some discounts, we have some no bills in there. So that might get us down to 80, 90. And most advisors are surprised when they do this calculation as to what it is, what their average blended rate is, because those no bills, those discounts, they sneak in really quickly, and lower that average. So figuring out what those two numbers are and like really just what they are, that's kind of the first step. And who's majorly outside of those, and is there a good reason? Of course, if there's business reasons, there's also compliance reasons that you want to look at who's outside of your average significantly. So that those are really the first places to start.
And on that note, there's a couple different ways to do this, right? There's the do-it-yourself side. There's working with a company like Smart Kx. I know, Lacey, you've actually put together some things via spreadsheet that you're using with some of your clients today. If you want to share a little bit of background on that end and share that spreadsheet, I'm sure there's a few folks that might be interested in what that looks like as well.
Yeah, so if you're a user of Smart KX, you already have access to a lot of this. Obviously, we have all of your AUM fee billing. So we know these numbers, and we are rolling those out to users um, in our Insights dashboard. So I can show you a little bit about that, what that looks like. So here's what our dashboard looks like. We will show you, your AUM, if that's moving, your last collected revenue, how many current households that you have, and then really like your overall, this is a firm wide, so your overall billing rate, um, what your average client is paying on every dollar that comes in, 82 bips here. And then getting into some more exciting stuff. So, how many assets are billed at no bill? So, you're managing them, they're on your master, they're coming through, you're doing all the things for them, but you're not billing on them for whatever reason, or any assets that aren't assigned. So, they're kind of, we call them orphaned, kind of out there, but still not being billed on. We'll be able to give you how much money, for lack of better words, that you're leaving on the table.
Yeah, I was wondering
Um,
what does that mean? What's money on the table? What goes into that? Is that simply a calculation of that overall billing rate on the unassigned assets, if I'm reading this correctly?
yes.
Got it.
So we tell you, and some of those advisors will say they should be no bill, but this has been another surprise for advisors when they see this. They're like, "Oh, I didn't realize that these accounts were adding up so fast." And we might say, "Oh, we'll no bill your kid's account or a certain asset, but we're still doing the reporting, we're still doing the research, we're still using it in our trade allocations. Like you are still doing time and money for those things, and so that number usually comes as a surprise.
Yeah.
And then we're introducing some other um, metrics here that will take your firm's data and then it will show you that on your individual client household data. So here's where the comparison really starts. So um, here you can see like we have their blended rate and how and the color coordination of 65 is X% away from your overall billing rate. So John Smith is significantly underpaying. Sally Jones looks like she's paying right where your average is, and Tom Williams is paying significantly more than what your average is. So giving you this information again, so you can really see that compared to your overall billing rate of, okay, am I spending a significant amount of time on John Smith per quarter and he's actually underpaying, which means he's subsidizing my other clients, like Tom, are subsidizing my work for him. Um, and really given kind of open everyone's eyes to like, okay, who's too far out of where we need to be.
Makes sense.
And then if you'll notice, this other column here is amend. So this is something because we can adjust fee schedules, um, because we can finalize and complete your client agreement, send it for signature, and update your fee schedule. If you want to update John Smith's fee, if you're not using Smart KX, the DIY is you need to either fill out your client agreement, tell somebody we're going to increase John's fee to 85 bips. You need to finalize this agreement. You need to upload it to DocuSign, HelloSign, send it in the mail, get it to him, have him sign it, have him return it, put that document somewhere, put the updated fee schedule. Instead, because we have the capabilities to do that, you can hit amend, change his fee schedule. It finalizes your agreement, sends it to him for signature. When he signs it, the change takes effect. So we tell you these analytics and then we help you adjust them.
Fantastic. And as we're going through here, one of the other things that I'll mention from working with Lacey, given her background and the firms that she's worked with, the understanding of actually taking some of these concepts and how the rubber hits the road in terms of potentially changing fee schedules, looking at that, but also from a compliance standpoint, understanding what goes into that is incredibly huge. I know we've got another slide up there, Lacey, that goes into, yep. Yep, there's the three-step process right there. Lacey, if you want to walk us through that quickly.
Yeah, so these are our three-pronged approach. Our client agreement, um, what you're going to bill the client, written down, how you're going to bill it. This is client specific. The calculation technique is also in your ADV. We can handle the client agreement piece. We also review your ADV. Of course, we calculate and collect exactly how that agreement is documented. Because we've sent the agreement for signature, we actually have that data. You don't need to move it from the agreement to your fee calculator. We have it all. We can do it straight from there. If you're catching that that reduces a lot of your compliance audit, you are correct. You have a lot less to audit between that contract and the fee. And then, of course, the revenue analysis. So, what the details of your collected revenue are, where might be opportunities for improvement there, and then how to adjust that back to the number one, your client agreement.
Absolutely. And as we're about to dive into a walkthrough of both Wealthbox as well as Smart Kx, I do want to give everyone a chance. If you are interested in getting a copy of the spreadsheet, and
Oh, we got
yep,
to we got to hop back a little bit. We got to show the spreadsheet.
yeah,
Sorry to interrupt.
all right,
So we for those of you that aren't using Smart KX, we've developed this really great interactive spreadsheet where you can plug in these numbers yourself and see these outputs. So let me share that now. We can send it to you after this. It is growing to add different metrics. Um, but this is the data that it will show you. With very little input. So I'll show you the input tab first. And you'll see a trend here. This is following, we have asked advisors what they want to see. Obviously, to show you the metrics, we have to build them. So we're building them in a spreadsheet for non-users to download and see, with the hopes that you will be able to get a better insight as to what your practice looks like and also spur other questions of, I would like to see this about my firm, or this seems really interesting. So you'll see these, there's two tabs. When we send you the spreadsheet, it will have a Loom video included, which will tell you how to use the spreadsheet. Firm inputs, all you need to do is input in the blue boxes, whether you collect monthly or quarterly, doesn't matter here. Just put in what your AUM is, your collected revenue, and the number of clients you have. So anytime you collect revenue, you can pop that in here, and it's going to um, spit out these really nice cards and the averages for you to follow. So the first line is the most recent entry um, of what your AUM was, your collected revenue, your number of clients. It will return your blended rate and your average client spend. There's graphs down here by quarter that will continue to update through the year as you input data. And then, of course, your running average. So you can see how your most recent compares to your average.
fantastic. And we had quite a few folks give the thumbs up. So we'll be getting this spreadsheet out to you as well. With that, we'll dive into a brief walkthrough of Wealthbox as well as Smart KX. And as I pull up Wealthbox here, just a reminder to those joining us that everything you're looking at is available on a trial basis. We offer up to 14-day free trials with the integrations available to turn on as well. I'm logged in as advisor Brad Creedon here under firm Ripple Advisors. For those of you out there that may have multiple offices or multiple different advisors in one office, know that we do have the ability to create separate workspaces as well. As I take a look at this page, on the top right, you'll see that we have integrations with both Microsoft Office 365 as well as Google Workspaces, and you get your day at a glance with things like tasks, workflow steps, showing you exactly where you're at, as well as special dates. So think of things like client anniversaries, birthdays, and then also any open opportunities as well. On the left navigation panel here, you'll see we are on our home page, but also have email, contacts, tasks, workflows, calendar, opportunities, projects, files, reports, and dashboards, and a quick look at recently viewed pages as well. Now, right here in the middle of the screen, you'll see that we've got our publisher tool. And one of the things that firms love about Wealthbox is that it's incredibly easy to use. So as I put in a note, you'll see that it only takes 2 clicks to add that note. It will cascade down into the activity stream and automatically connect back to both the client or prospect and household page. As I open up that client or household page, you'll see in this right flyout panel, I can make a phone call directly from Wealthbox, send an email, get a quick look at special dates. So again, think about client anniversaries, birth dates, different staff members that they're working with, all in one spot. Now, as I open up this client page for Delilah Jones, you'll see the same consistent view. So first things first, right up top, you can see any tags for Delilah. You can make a phone call directly off this page, send an email directly off of this page, and get a quick look at any upcoming tasks, workflow steps, opportunities, and again, those special dates for that client. I'll also note that you have the same functionality. I can add a note. I could use our ability to transcribe a note right from here, tag in another team member, letting them know that I caught up with Delilah. Also, as I scroll down, you'll see in the activity stream, we've got all your notes, tasks, workflow steps. But one feature that a lot of firms like is that I can also see emails back and forth with that client all in one spot. And with that, Lacey, I will pass things over to you for a look at Smart Kx and to give a little bit more background on the integration with Wealthbox as well.
Yeah, I think that's a great, you had talked about the integration, the emails coming back and forth, and that data collection there. We actually do, so I'll give you a quick overview of Smart KX, but I want to keep that in mind that that integration and data moving between different systems is something that we're going to hit on and ask a little feedback on. So, let me share my screen here. Okay, I think we're seeing Anne here in the top.
We
All
are.
right. So we'll hit on the three things that Smart KX does. One is to onboard new clients. So you have a prospect, you're on the phone with them, like Andrew and I are now. Andrew says yes, he wants to come on board. I can say great, hit new client, type Andrew's name. We'll also bring it from Wealthbox if you have your integration set up, all of his data, his household contact information, um, address. You have your regulatory docs here that you have checked that you want to send client agreement, yes. You select the template that you want to use, you select the fee schedule that you want imported, any notes, and you hit submit. So your prospect says yes. Within 10 seconds, you've finalized the client agreement, sent the regulatory docs, and set up the fee schedule. Andrew, great. I'm so glad you're coming along. hop in your email. I just sent you the contract for signature. Let's walk through it. See if you have any questions. Andrew pulls it up. He loves it. He signs. He's still on that high of saying yes as a prospect. And we get off the phone, and my firm now has a client that we're going to start onboarding, but we already have a client. He's signed the agreement. He's agreed to what he's going to pay us, and we already have that fee schedule set up. Of course, we also bill on the AUM. So once Andrew's accounts come over, that fee schedule is assigned to them. We're ready to bill. We can invoice him for the short period. He will be in our bulk billing next week. Customizable invoices can send to your clients, can put your logo on them, have all the data that you want on them. Getting a freeze here on my end. But we calculate the fee, goes to, of course, your custodian, all that's easy. Then, of course, we have the insights page where we show you, as a firm, your clients, your AUM, collected revenue, your overall rate. These are great for you to look at. When you want to adjust that fee schedule, you can come back over to Ann's. I'm going to mark her invoices paid. We go to her agreement. We hit amend. Let's say we want to charge her on the Tesla that's in there. We hit amend, make that adjustment, hit signing, send it to her for signature, summary, hit amend. That new agreement has been completed, sent to her for signature. When it's signed, it'll come back and update the billing method based on what we agreed to. So that leads us to one of our next poll question is these data analytics as far as what Anne is paying, her dollar spend, her blended rate, if that would be useful when you're looking at Wealthbox.
Just put a poll up for those of you joining us. If you're interested in that, let us know if you're interested in deepening the integration. And on that note, Lacey, I know a couple questions came in specifically surrounding Smart KX as well as Wealthbox here. But we walked through quite a bit here and specifically surrounding revenue analytics. One of the things that I think surprised me as we've been discussing this was the feedback that you've been getting from advisors and what they've learned, right? Is there anything in specific that stands out to you in these conversations that surprised advisors or surprised you as you've gone through some of these exercises?
Yeah, I think the numbers are, if you've never calculated these numbers, regardless if it's about this type of business, any business, your own personal numbers, there's always kind of a surprise, right? Like you may have things running in your head, but we're all have a little bias in ourselves and our spending and our savings, which is our whole industry is around. So that's always a surprise. But one of the more interesting pieces that I've seen is that once the advisor knows, either if it's his or her firm or just his individual practice, knows that blended rate and that client spend, what the average is. One is he or she's able to set goals, right? Is this where I want to be? Or do I want to increase my average? Where do I really want to go? And that's a great metric to have and set those goals with. But the other thing is it's sort of like counting calories or counting spend. It gives them a gut check when they're onboarding the new prospect and either the prospect asks to negotiate the fees or the advisor feels in some way that we need to negotiate the fees. um, uh, that it gives them a gut check of like, wait a second, like my blended rate's 82 bips, and if I negotiate this fee and it's going to be 70, like that's bringing down my average. And either I got to keep it at 82 or I got to increase the average, but like I don't want to bring down the average unless there's a reason, which we're always good at finding reasons, but just that gut check of like, wait a second, like I don't know if maybe this is the client for me if we're going to be in a band that I can't reasonably take on. Um, and then really the confidence of like, my value is more than that. My value is more than 70 bips. I already know it because an average is paying 82. And so, no, I can't negotiate against myself here. Like, I can't lower the blended rate. So, really, that gut check has been um, surprising, but it's also like it feels really good as a founder to who built the product to give them that information of this is your value. You already have this many clients paying you this much. You can't just easily negate that value. So that's probably been like the most fascinating to watch. And then just the internal competition of advisors with themselves of like, well, I want to raise that average, right? Like I want to continue to add more value and to increase my fees because in that way, everyone wins, first and foremost, the client.
And on that note, so that's talking about things on more of a micro scale, right? Like for specific relationships or for a specific firm. Another question came in that I think is a little bit wider, a little bit more macro, and that's, how are you able to communicate with the firms that you're working with? So many people get this mindset and really get, dialed in on their own business. Are you able to benchmark things from an industry standpoint or add some context that comes from outside of their firm and what you're seeing elsewhere?
Yeah, so we're working on some creative ways to do that. We have a lot of public insight, like with ADVs. Um, to kind of start that benchmarking. I think anyone's critique of benchmarking is, well, if it's self-reporting, it's always again a little um, questionable. But yes, so we are working on some really interesting studies of like, if you're a state registered advisor, what does that look like? And we're really deciding if it's AUM based. I think that makes the most sense, but then also longevity and certain, not products, but different services that are offered. Advisors are so stretched in what they're expected to offer besides just investment advice at this point. That's table stakes, right? Um, so yeah, we're working on some interesting benchmarks there um, as to what we're seeing in the industry. Because to our knowledge, not there's that information isn't really out there. So we're excited to gather it and get it out to our users and potential users.
And to your point, it's so often anecdotal, right? This is what I know from another firm and that I'm friends with. And that brings me to another question that came in. And as we do so, I'm going to put up our screen here. If you're interested in finding out more about Wealthbox or Smart KX, please do reach out to our team. But Lacey, the final question that came in really has to do with, we talked a little bit about inflection points earlier, and be it buying or selling a firm, and how you can use some of the revenue analytics both to prepare for that conversation, but also to be set to sit at that table when it comes to acquiring or looking at being acquired. What do those conversations sound like? What can you help instill in some of the firms you're working with for those conversations?
Yeah, I think there's two pieces. If a firm's not looking at those data points, an acquirer is, and an acquirer is looking at them for their own benefit, and rightfully so, right? Like, is this person at 70 basis points overall, and we're seeing in our own massive firm or the other firms we've acquired that we can get clients up to 85, 90 bips? That's a great investment for them, especially on, a good cash flow business. And so having the numbers, I think, prepares you, even if you're not selling, in a better way that the numbers that your firm is at and where they can possibly go. But when you go to the table, you know what you're up against. I mean, it is a negotiation process, and understanding how they're going to make money off the asset that you're selling, and increasing that value ahead of sitting at the table. Um, is better for you because there's more value to offer there. And it also, I think, gives you confidence at the table, but also sets your firm up is that you've been paying attention and you are running this like a serious business, um, that you've been analyzing for the past, 3+ years, and you've increased that analysis to a buyer that looks a lot shinier than not having these metrics and this growth pattern over time. You can sit down and say, these are our metrics over time. This is how it's growing. This is our average client. Um, that along with a lot of other things that I could talk about as far as, contracts, keeping things clean, having the revenue be easily purchased. Those just really set you up for success and make you just a better candidate to be acquired rather than, if you don't have those data points and behind you and don't have your business clean and ready to go. And it helps you with confidence and negotiating power.
It's a mighty different conversation, going to the table saying, I think this is what we charge. I think this is what our AUM is versus understanding the analytics behind that, what the firm looks like. And for those out there that are using a CRM or maybe not using a CRM to its full ability, understanding things like segmentation and demographics of your client base and understanding what that looks like pairs really well with the revenue analytics when it does come time to get to the table there.
Yeah, and even if you don't show up of like, well, I think it's this, and you're like, well, it's been, it was 1 million in this, and then it was this, like being able to have the data is so much more impactful than even you and I sitting here talking. Of course, it's my business. Like I think it's wonderful. I think, the AUM's great, the numbers are great, the segmentation's great. But if you can sit and say, I have X amount of clients that are in my segment A. Here's what's in the segment A. Here's how much time we spend with them. I have Y amount that are in B, how much they pay, how much time we spend, the services offered, which is really Wealthbox and Smart KX data from both of those. That's so much stronger when you're going into a position of negotiation.
Absolutely. Well, again, I want to thank everyone for joining. Again, for those of you that may not have seen Wealthbox previously, reach out to our team. We'd love to have a discussion and walk you through things further. Same thing with the Smart KX team. You can reach out at sales@smartkx.io. And again, thank you all for joining. Lacey, we appreciate the partnership with Smart KX. Thank you all for joining. Have a fantastic afternoon, and we'll talk to you all soon.
Thanks, Andrew.
See ya.
Bye.